can call the meeting to order. All right, go ahead.
Oh, all right, we'll try this. The meeting is now called to order. First up on the agenda is the approval of the consent agenda.
Oh, before we do that, Marge, let's do introductions and then.
Okay, let's do it.
Okay. Let me just let somebody else in here. Cliff, why don't you start? You're at the top of my.
Cliff Eichinger, manager.
And Nicole?
Nicole Soderholm, permit coordinator with the district.
Brad?
Brad Lindeman with Bar Engineering, district engineer.
Diane?
Ann Ward, manager.
And Paige?
Paige Alberg, project manager of the watershed.
And Larry?
Larry Swope, watershed manager.
And Lauren?
I'm Kirshner, attorney for the district.
Oh.
And Marge?
Marge, watershed manager.
Pam?
Pam Skinner, watershed manager.
And Bill?
Bill Bartoja, natural resources specialist with the watershed.
And Dave?
Dave Lawson, district staff.
And then for those of you that just came in, we're just doing introductions. And if you are interested in speaking during the visitor comments, let me know and I'll make sure I make a note of that. Bert, do you want to go first?
With my comments or introduction, sorry.
Introduction.
Bert Johnson, Twin Lake, President Twin Lake Association, 205 Twin Lake Trail. Thanks.
Thanks. And Kyle?
Kyle Wallstrom, I also live on Twin Lake.
And Commissioner Fretham?
Hello, this is Commissioner Fretham. I live in Shoreview and represent substantial portions of the watershed.
All right, Kyle or Nicole, were you interested in giving comments in our visitor comments?
No, I'm just here to listen today.
Okay. Kyle, how about you?
I'll defer my comments to my colleague.
All right. Thanks, Kyle. All right, next March, then we have the approval of the agenda. And as a reminder, do that. If anybody wants to remove anything from the consent agenda, now would be the time to do that.
I'll move approval of the agenda.
I don't know.
Larry?
We want to say what we like taken out of the consent agenda right now. Is that what you said, or are we going to approve the agenda?
Yes, we need to remove things from the consent agenda before we approve the agenda.
Okay, there are two things I'd like to remove for additional comments, and that is the permit for the Suzanne Ramsey stormwater and the meeting minutes themselves.
Okay, so I'll remove permit 2025 from consent, and that will go down into the permit. It'll go under 5A.
Okay.
And then the minutes we will do right after the consent agenda. So kind of between 3 and 4.
Okay, thank you.
So we're back to approval of the consent agenda.
No, just the regular agenda. And Cliff has made a motion, and I'm assuming with the
I'll move the agenda with the changes.
Is there a second?
I'll second it, but I would also like an item added to the agenda.
You should say that now also as well.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. And what I'd like added is a proposal for non-winter water movement.
Okay, and we can put that in, we'll do that in the presentations and action items. We'll make that 7D.
Okay, thank you.
7B.
Okay,
Okay,
so
let's try the,
move
how are we doing, folks?
the agenda with all the proposed changes.
And there was a second?
I'll
Larry,
second.
right?
Yeah, Larry.
Yep, Larry, second.
All in favor?
Did
Aye.
you roll call?
We have to have we have to have
Roll call.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
Aye. Cliff,
Cliff votes aye. Aye.
Larry,
Aye.
Diane?
Oh, she said
Diane,
aye, but she was muted.
Pam,
Aye.
I'll unmute you. I can't unmute you.
motion carries.
Yeah, Diane, thumbs up for the aye. Okay.
It's really hard for me to hear. Tina, can you just help me out here?
Yep, so next we have the consent agenda. And there was 2 items removed, the minutes and permit 2025. Otherwise, everything would be approved with 1 motion.
Okay, so we need a motion. Anybody?
I'll move to approve the consent agenda as changed.
Is there a second?
Seconded.
Cliff?
Yep.
Okay, now we have to go around the room again. All in favor? Me, Marge, aye. Larry?
Aye.
Diane?
Aye.
Cliff? Pam?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Next, I believe we're down to visitor comments.
No, first we'll do the approval of the meeting minutes from the May 6th meeting.
Okay, thank you, Tina.
And Larry asked to remove that, so I'll open it up for him for comments.
Yeah, I just have one comment on that, and it's actually for future use, but it has to do with where we talk about Rule D and not to increase the potential of flooding downstream. I think we need to have a little more clarity on exactly what that means. So it's more a comment about the meeting minutes than the meeting minutes themselves.
Okay.
Well, I think that's fine. So then what, are you in favor of approving the minutes, Larry?
Well, Diane has a comment, yes.
Okay.
Go ahead, Diane.
And mine is more in the nature of a comment too. On page 5, under the Beltline Resiliency Study, and after the motion and further discussion, the minutes reflect that a manager provided some specific input to the draft responses. I think in that situation, we should list what the input was. And similarly, on page 6, at the very top, where managers provided input to staff on the items that would be helpful within the study, I think those should be listed.
So would you like, how would you like me to?
If it's not too, well, if it's.
Go ahead.
Cliff?
I would support that as long as they weren't too lengthy comments. But you know, if there are quite a few comments, I think we have to just make it general.
Well, in the first situation, they were my comments and there were only 4 and they weren't very long. And in the second, I don't think our input was that lengthy.
Yeah, I can't remember.
So are you comfortable with being a change that you won't see right now? I mean, I can add them in if you want for these minutes, but I don't have that language right now, you know, in front of me.
I think I would be happy if you added in the last one, which was the input that we had on the items to be included in the study.
Okay.
Oh, so where are we now, Tina? We have some comments added.
Yep. Yeah, and if you're comfortable with me adding those in, but you guys approving them now, that's.
Well, I don't know what they are until I see them.
Yeah, I mean, I'll go back and listen to the recording and make sure I get the language for what was suggested. And if you want to wait meeting minutes next month, I can do that too.
Well, as long as you're using the recording of the last meeting, that's fine with me. I'll move approval of the meeting minutes with the additions requested by Dan.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second.
All in favor? We're going around the room. I'll start with Cliff,
Aye.
Pam,
Aye.
Larry,
Aye.
me, yes. Diane,
Aye. And Tina, would you send us those, please? Just
Yeah.
email them or whatever.
Yep. I will do that.
Thank you.
now let me try this again. Are we down to visitors' comments?
We are, yes.
And do we have any?
Yes, we do. So Bert Johnson.
And again, it's 4 minutes each. Bert knows that, though.
So
Would you like to step to the podium, Bert?
I'm at the
He's
podium.
there. He's there.
So, so first off, Bert Johnson, on behalf of Twin Lake Association. As you know, we founded Twin Lake Association with 3 objectives. First, to make sure that West Vadnais doesn't inundate Twin Lake in the future. Second, that Twin Lakes historic outlet be restored so that there's a sustainable and predictable surface elevation of Twin Lake. And then third, to preserve the water quality within Twin Lake and the fish and vegetation within and around the lake. So those are our priorities. Those have been our priorities since our inception. Couple of comments on the board packet. We're pleased to see that the outlet project is that bids are going to be select. Presumably there's a bid opening and there will be a bidder selected tonight's meeting. So that's good. We're happy to see that the outlet project is going to move forward. Second, just a couple of comments related to the operations plan that I know it's been the subject of some previous discussion by the board. Our concern in the long run for the operations plan, I understand it's there's no action item tonight on the operations plan, but our concern on the operations plan, our interest in the operations plan is to ensure that the surface elevation of Twin Lake will be predictable and sustainable at that 72.2 level. I think the operations plan, as the board is, as in the packet today, as it's been revised to MnDOT does that. I want to thank Tina for having multiple conversations and just kind of talking with us informally. I think it's really helped keep the lines of communication open. There's still sort of concerns because it's not a final, there's still potential for Twin Lake to hold water that is in excess of that 872.2 level. It seems like if the operations plan will be triggered so that if the level hits 872.8 and we can bring it back down to 872.2 through the city's operation and participation with the watershed, that does seem like a pretty reasonable way of maintaining predictable surface elevation at 872.2. I think we have, we don't want anybody downstream, so to speak, to be flooded either. So we understand your concerns there, but likewise, we don't think Twin Lake should hold excess water and risk our properties, to protect just sort of the potential of very minimal impact downstream, which has been shown through the pumping that happened last summer to be an extremely tiny impact. And really, it's more about the pace of the flow than it is about the actual impact. So to make sure that I think as Cliff called it, the opportunistic opening of the gate is something that we really want to be able to count on. So we're just going to continue to monitor the operations plan and appreciate your work in trying to work with us on that. I understand your obligations to the public as a whole. And, we really want to see the outlet installed and are happy that that's going to happen, and really want to keep monitoring what you're working on with the operations plan. so that we can have a predictable surface elevation.
Thank you.
That's all I had. Thanks.
Now I believe we're on item 5, the permit program.
Just a
And
second,
we moved
Marge.
2025 down to the permit program. So should we start with that, Tina?
Marge, just one more thing. We
Go
did
ahead.
join in a little bit late. It's Bruce Copley. So I'm just gonna ask if he was interested in doing visitor comments today.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
Bruce Copley joined into the meeting after our introduction. So I just wanted to check with him and see if he was interested.
Oh, yeah.
Visitor comments. Bruce? You're muted, Bruce, if you're trying to speak and we can't hear you.
There we go. I think I got unmuted now. Thank you.
Yes, you are.
I don't have any specific visitor comments this evening, just listening to what's going on. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Bruce. Yes.
All right, let's try this again.
Yes.
Permit program.
Yes.
So
permit
we're moving
2025.
2025 down to the permit program. Should we start with that?
Yep, that would be correct. And Larry again was the one that removed that. So I'll turn it to him for comments or questions.
Yep, a couple of things that, first of all, I would like, and Brad may be able to do this, a run through of the logic, which in some ways seems very innovative to me, which is a good thing, as to how this system is set up. The other thing I want to talk about is the impact on the area around, particularly with the Ben Meyer comment that this would meet their requirements for not impacting the wildlife in the area. So if you could start kind of walk us through it, Brad, because I think it's interesting, but I'm curious as to the logic that you guys came to do this circular pumping thing.
So if you recall back to when we primarily Evan was involved with the groundwater study that we did of wetland A and kind of some of these other areas that hold water along Ramsey Road. We identified through that the pond, which we call Northwest Ramsey, when that holds water and it starts to get up elevated, that impacts Suzanne Pond and Matt Gray's home much more than the other surrounding water bodies. So we were looking at ways to manage that water level in the Northwest Ramsey Pond. And at the same time, the city was looking to upgrade their pump system that manages Suzanne Pond. And so we worked through, that recommendation, if you recall from, I think that was probably from a couple of years ago, and talked to the city about that. And so what this pipeline does is actually allow water to flow from Northwest Ramsey Pond into Suzanne Pond, and then utilize the upgraded pumps to move the water into the Grass Lake system. Now, the Suzanne Pond pumps that currently exist are much smaller, but they serve as the function to move the water to Grass Lake. So it doesn't change that component. It just helps to manage the water levels in the Northwest Ramsey Pond so they don't have as much of an impact on Matt Gray's home and other homes that are around Suzanne Pond. One key element, and we received this feedback from the city and even from people who live around Suzanne Pond, is, well, if the pumps fail, are we introducing more water into Suzanne Pond? So the recommendation, and this is included in the design of this, is a shutoff valve. So if that should occur, we can separate those two and not have that additional drainage area flowing into Suzanne Pond, adding more water.
Okay.
That help, Larry?
Yeah, that was what I was kind of interested in, because it seemed to be actually solving a lot of problems. The question still comes with the fact that on the northwest pond, can you explain Ben's comments in here that it won't affect biological diversity? It seems to me, I'm not sure what he used as a starting point, but that area was for a long time, up until probably 2014, 2016, someplace in there. Is he looking at historically what it's doing, or is he looking at the condition that it's in right now and saying adding water to it won't make much difference?
Nicole can speak to that.
Yeah.
Yeah, we consulted with Ben with Board of Water and Soil to actually, it's kind of the opposite thinking. We wanted to make sure that from the state's perspective, to alter water levels of this area wouldn't drain the wetland to convert it to a drier type. So it's actually kind of reversed of what you're thinking, and just to make sure that the state doesn't consider that an impact, and that there can be a fluctuation of water levels in this wetland and not impact the quantity of wetland, the quality of the wetland. So it more had to do so with making sure we weren't draining it too much. And so that's where that came from. But the delineation was not completed on this because the area is flooded. So Ben did look at, and also staff looked at historical photos, web soil survey, which has soil types. So you can see, generally speaking, where the hydric soil is. So we use those resources to conservatively estimate what that wetland edge would be, which is right now covered in water. So does that answer your?
Yeah, kind of. So what the logic is it's flooded now, and we could take it back to a level like it was historically without changing anything. Is that the logic?
Yeah, not drying it out from what it was. That's
And
right.
that would be because we were putting in, or the city is putting in an outlet for it, so where it didn't happen before. So it was like determining what a normal water elevation would be and making sure it falls within that range of what normal used to be, at least historically.
Okay. Is there going to be digging in that area?
That doesn't mean though that.
Oh, sorry.
Cliff?
I just wanted to clarify though that even though this system is establishing more of a normal level, doesn't mean that it couldn't dry up if we have a droughty period.
Right.
It could still fall below that level.
Right.
I had another question for Brad. On there's an inlet, so it'll take water to Suzanne Pond, but there's a gravity pipe down the lower level near Ramsey Road. Could you explain why there's the two different gravity pipes? It says proposed gravity line from the southwestern side of Northwest Ramsey Pond.
So
I don't have that right in front of me. I can look at that.
So that's the line that's
like,
taking it from Ramsey Road to Northwest Ramsey.
Oh, it's from the road draining to the pond?
To the pond?
Yes. Okay. Yep. Yep. So that's draining to the pond.
Why wouldn't that drainage just go to the south?
Good question.
I don't know for sure. I know there was, I recall there was some discussion about that, not as part of the permitting process, but as a part of the city's need for moving the water from that side of the road. And I think there were some challenges getting it across the road. Now, of course, they could have piped it, I understand, but I would have to look into that further. And
it just occurred to me that it could be that the pond needs some hydrologic input, so maybe that's why some water is draining that way.
it may have been that water is getting there now and then taking that out of it. Yes, that could be part of the reasoning.
Okay.
Yeah, but I would have to follow up with that.
Yeah, that's all right.
Yeah, what I understood the logic of that is that rather than trying to drain the southwest pond independently, if you send it over the northwest pond, it goes to Suzanne Pond, and then you can pump it into Grass Lake. That's what I was saying. When I look at this is kind of a circular deal. as,
Yeah.
as a way to use one pump to do a whole bunch of stuff.
Okay, that makes sense.
So do we need a motion to approve this?
Dan had a hand up.
Diane
had a question.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I thought it might have been helpful to put up the map. I didn't really understand why the southwest pond had to be pumped to the northwest to Suzanne Pond and back across, or why the road couldn't drain south.
Yeah.
That's the direction we want the water to go, to Grass Lake and on down through the watershed. And I thought before that their road drainage went to a pond a little further west on the south side of Ramsey. And
That
then
is the pond.
there.
Yep, that is the pond that you're looking at there. That is the pond that's further to the west. That's not the
Right.
southwest pond. Yeah. Yep. And I don't, it's not draining water out of that pond. I think it's only taking water. That one pipe that goes to Northwest Ramsey is only taking, I think, from the road, but.
So if it is moved, if that
looks like from-
additional area moved to the south to that larger pond, the pond that was part of the pumping that we did a couple of years ago, that is isolated. So that doesn't have a piped connection to anywhere. That ends up flooding. And if you recall the stop log structure that's through the box culvert that's under Ramsey Road, that's to help keep that water on the south side, because we're trying to keep it out of that northwest pond. Now that we have this pipe that can drain it to pumps that can move it all the way to Grass Lake, that should help that quite a bit. But it probably factored into that decision as well, because we're trying to keep that water level or water out of the south side as much as possible, because there's nowhere for it to go.
And out of the road.
So it's not being pumped out of the southwest pond to the northwest.
No.
Okay, and the flow arrows didn't make sense to me. There was no green arrow for the main flow, and the white arrows didn't really make sense.
Those white arrows, you mean on the map? Those white arrows are larger drainage area arrows. They're not site-specific arrows. So they're just saying generally water goes from this direction to this direction. And from this body to this body. So Suzanne Pond gets to grass. It's just a bigger, some of these drainage arrows too don't take into account, they're part of a larger map system about general flow, not specific.
Yeah, Diane, I would point you to the site plan has directional arrows after the special provision page. So that might help.
Okay, and then I had some other questions. I was curious if you know why raising Ramsey Road is necessary, if this is done and with all the other improvements that have been made in the drainage.
Is that for me?
I can take that.
Okay.
So raising Ramsey Road in that area, that's the low spot. So if we're looking at long-term flood resiliency and trying to keep it away from homes, that would be the lowest point at which, if the entire area filled up with water, it would move towards Suzanne Pond. So by raising that, it does keep it away from the homes. And now this is a very extreme event, much higher than what we've seen to date. But I think it's just planning for the future in the event something like that would happen. But it's to keep that water from flowing down the road, working around that high point and getting into Suzanne Pond where those homes are at.
In talking about the northwest pond, what is the normal elevation that they came to after looking at the photos and topography maps?
Bowser?
Yeah.
Ben said that, anything above, setting the outlet at or above 876 would result in no impact. So that was a conservative estimate. But since it doesn't have an outlet, to my understanding, there's not an easy answer for the normal water level.
And I think that was consistent with when we looked at the groundwater impacts to the low home around Suzanne Pond. Keeping it at or below that level really added the protection for that home in the groundwater pressure it was receiving when water was higher.
Yeah, that's what I thought the number might be from, but it seems to me, looking at the historical elevations and even the high elevation of Ramsey, that seems like an awfully high number to keep it at or to stop the flow at. So is it the historical numbers and they came up with that, or is it that's the number you decided was the top amount before it impacts the gray home?
I don't know all the details. I just know that the number in the pond that we were looking at from a groundwater perspective, from my recollection, was that 76 number. Without a piped outlet, again, as Cliff was alluding to, it has been a landlocked wetland system. So during dry period, it will dry up because it has a relatively small drainage area. And in wet periods, we can see how high it can get. And we're just trying to limit the maximum level it can get at just in order to protect that home. Otherwise, it would act very similar to how it has, filling up, drying up during dry periods, things like that. We're just trying to cap off that top level and not try to drain it down further than that. And I think Bowser just agreed with our logic with respect to that, and they found that, Nicole, you can correct me if I'm wrong, they found that acceptable given how the system has worked without an outlet.
And
yeah, Ben actually, oh, go ahead, Tina.
I was just going to say the city wanted to make sure they could do that gravity too. So I think they wanted to make sure whatever they set the Northwest Ramsey outlet that was able to gravity flow to Suzanne. So I don't know that they could go much lower than that.
I just had one more comment, and that is when we set these highest levels, that's the level that you've determined would impact the gray home. I wish we would set them a little lower so that we could accommodate some storm, bad storms and high precipitation. So in this situation, could be sitting at 876, and then we get a lot of rain and it goes over. So I wish we would just, I've discussed it with West Vadnais and other issues too. I wish we would just set it a little lower to just have a little bit of give in the system.
And I just want to remind, since we don't have a delineation, that 876 was considered the lowest, conservative, but the lowest elevation without worrying about the potential for wetland impacts. So we don't have unlimited, we can't set it a whole lot lower because of that as well, triggering replacement. And I mean, it sounds like the design was already kind of in line with that, but that is another complicating factor.
Any other comments on this?
Yeah, has anybody talked to the city of Shoreview about pumping out the Northwest Basin right now while they're waiting for this construction to be done?
Yeah, I did talk to both Mark and Tom over the last couple of weeks, and they're aware of the high water levels, and at this time they're not planning to pump it. But they did say that they anticipate the contractor will need to in order for the construction, but at this time they said they were not planning to pump it.
Do you know?
Is this planning to?
You know why they weren't planning to pump it? Sorry.
That's okay. I'm just wondering, what's the timeline on the project construction?
They have a contractor ready to go, it sounds like.
Oh, okay.
As soon as our permit is received, I think they are ready to go.
So pumping will happen, but part of the project probably. Yeah.
They're anticipating, they haven't gotten those plans from the contractor yet. They have to in order to do the construction.
And I think Ramsey County gave permission for them to work on the land too.
Yeah, they have their agreements in place for them. Yep.
Okay.
Last call for comments on this project.
I'll move approval of.
Oh,
Twen-
Cliff,
I'll
I'm
move appro-
sorry.
I'll move approval of 2025.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, we'll go around the room again. All in favor? Marge, aye. Larry?
Aye.
Diane?
Aye.
Cliff?
Aye.
And Pam?
Aye.
Motion carries. Now I believe we're on to single lot residence permit.
Yeah, I'll let Nicole kick this off and then we can have some discussion on that.
Yeah, I just gotta find it in my packet since we're jumping around.
Page 77.
Oh, thank you.
It's okay, take your time.
So I've been having some discussions with City of Shoreview. A little background, we have permitted single lot residential permits. You've seen them in the past. When lakeshore owners want to, do some improvements to their shoreline, our Rule D for floodplain activity triggers. There's no minimum amount of disturbance to trigger that permit. And this year we've seen an influx in requests for shoreline work, particularly on Snail Lake. As we all know, there's high water on Snail, and residents are wanting to do some improvements to stabilize their shoreline or to reclaim, in some cases, some lost yard. So I told Tina in response to a conversation she had with the Snail Lake group that I would take a look at what we could do to accommodate some of these smaller projects. I think generally our rules are more made for some larger projects like that are an acre or more. And if there's something we can do to streamline the process for some of these smaller projects without changing the rule itself, and just seeing if the board would be amenable to that, or if there's any suggestions. I did offer some in that memo, and I'm just looking to get your feedback on how you'd feel about changing some of that process for residents.
Yeah, we met over Zoom with a few different members of the Snail Lake Improvement District Board. And one of the members in particular was concerned about the process and the duplication of efforts too between the city and the watershed. So, and she just said the process was cumbersome for an average homeowner to navigate. And so we're definitely sensitive to that, and we want to make sure that we're not putting up roadblocks for people to be able to improve their shorelines. So these are the items. There's 5 here on the bullet list that Nicole worked through. And, fees was one of them. Our $500 permit processing fee is hefty for a single homeowner on a small project. And so that was one item that we want to talk about. I don't know if we want to take them one by one or if we want to kind of look at them as a whole, but staff approval was something we thought we'd talk with you about for the smaller projects, so that we can streamline and kind of get them through the pipeline, we'll say. We can still include them in the packet so that you can see what kind of activity we've had, but if you'd be amenable to them not coming to the board, that would help just speed up that process for them.
Tina?
Yeah.
Can we see if any of the board members has any real objection to doing this, first of all?
Sure. Yeah, that sounds good. Diane has her hand up.
Because if nobody does, then we can go ahead. And if they do, then we have to go through one by one.
Sounds good.
I don't have an objection. I really liked this a lot. I like the balance of making it easier for our constituents. I liked having the staff approve those lower level ones. I would like to see criteria established just for consistency. And then I can go through them all, but I won't. The only question I had is whether you had looked at what other watershed districts are done, if some have done this before, or are we taking the lead, or is it what everybody's doing? I'm just curious.
Yeah, I've looked at, it might have been about a year ago when we were meeting, all the permit regulatory folks from the metro watersheds kind of met and went over our permit process. Those efforts kind of got stalled with the crazy year we've had, and we were kind of predominantly working on that in the winter time. But I do know that, for instance, for permit fees, they vary widely. Some watersheds have sort of like a calculation to determine the permit fee, which is kind of cumbersome and complicated. I was probably advocating for the $500 fee for the normal permit applications that we get, and then looking at something lower for single lot residential only. It's less staff review, it's less engineer review, and there's inherently less inspection because these are quicker projects. I will say that ironically our $500 fee is one of the lowest of the watersheds, but you know, we're mostly permitting larger projects, like I said. So there's other watersheds that have different rules about floodplain fill too that streamline permitting. Whereas, you know, they might have a minimum amount of fill that's allowed before triggering a permit. That would get into a rule change and a lot of discussion about our goals as a watershed. So I was looking for changes that won't require a rule change. It's more just a change in our implementation and our process. But I don't have those, for instance, like the permit fees, I don't have those offhand. I did ask the city of Shoreview. They also have their permit fees ramp up depending on the amount of fill brought in. And I was kind of just looking for maybe setting a one fee for any single lot residential, and then keeping the $500 fee for all others.
I'm supportive.
Okay. I'm sorry, Cliff, what did you say?
I'm supportive of all the recommendations.
I am too.
Yeah, I am too in general. Is there going to be a follow-up where these suggestions are put into something that we can add and make public? And are we going to decide on what the fees should be here? That's my main question. I'm okay with everything that's going on, and I think it's a really good idea. And it'll apply not only to Snail Lake people, the Twin Lakes people will probably do it.
Right.
In my backyard.
Yeah, that was the other consideration because we have 20 lakes, you know, in our watershed, and I didn't want to make a process just for Snail Lake residents and a different process for Owasso and that kind of thing. So that was definitely a factor. I am looking for some input on permit fees. I, you know, didn't have a lot of time to calculate before this board meeting, you know, what staff time would be, and it's hard to estimate because while there is less engineer review, tends to be more hand holding with the application process and correspondence and that kind of thing. So we can try to back it up with staff time, but if you guys just, as homeowners in the district, if you have an amount in mind that seems reasonable, I would be interested in hearing that.
If I may do an editorial, I think it's a great idea, and I think you should continue working in that direction and flesh out with whatever plan that you end up with. But I would make a motion to approve working on this process. Is that what you would like?
Yeah, I kind of wanted to get your feedback, and I've also been speaking with Lauren, our new communications coordinator, about how we can make changes to the website to better point people in the right direction. Our website, again, is very geared toward engineers because that's who we have applying for permits 99% of the time. So coming up with a fact sheet or guidance, you know, a one-page explanation of our rules and our process, and then also a link to a separate application that would be a little less time consuming to complete.
Mhm.
So that would still be forthcoming.
If I could make a
Cliff?
suggestion, I would look at various types of actions homeowners are requesting a permit for. So if it's just shoreline restoration, we kind of know the scope of that. But if they're also doing a substantial landscaping or wetland or floodplain fill, possibly, you know, maybe mark off those potential items and then think about whether or not there's any potential staff time tied to those additional aspects and make that tie to the permit or the escrow amount. But I think whatever you develop, as long as you've got some general idea for the staff time that would be involved, I think that could set the basis for a permit fee.
Okay. And I should mention for the staff approval, we wouldn't be looking to do that if a homeowner is requesting a variance, particularly with floodplain fill. So we would be doing staff approval for projects that meet our rules and all of our goals as far as compensatory storage, or if there's no fill, or if they can demonstrate the same amount of fill as their materials being removed as being added. You know, so if there were a variance requested with net fill, we would certainly bring that to the board.
Sounds good.
So what will the process be? Do you want to write it all up and have the proposed instructions for homeowners and propose an amount? I have no idea for amount. I mean, shore views are pretty low, but
right.
Yeah.
I don't know if you want to go that low, and you're adding a little extra work with figuring out the floodplain and the hand holding. So I do think you almost need to look at least some examples of staff time.
Yeah, why don't we do some of that calculation and we'll kind of flesh out the plan so that you'll see that next month for approval.
And then we can approve the process and change it on next month and catch a lot of people this summer then, right?
Yeah, yeah.
I think right now we just want to maybe make somebody make some sort of a motion that says, yes, we want to continue this process for the homeowners.
Yes, if you'd like to, you could do that.
I'll make a motion that we continue the process that Nicole put together a document that will formalize all the things that we basically agree with. I'm also going to make one comment too, is just try to remember these people are small project taxpayers. So like a lot of the stuff we get, these are businesses that come in and we have to make sure the people that own homes have already paid for a lot of this stuff through their taxes. So be as gentle as you can.
Yeah, I can assure you our permit program does not make any money. It is a service to residents, and we recognize that certainly. I would ask for clarification that in the interim of a formal board action on, it would be July 1st. If I have been getting a lot of requests already. Do you want me to hold off on that sort of alternate permit process until July, or are you comfortable in a sort of piloting that implementation if we get project requests in the next month?
I think we should continue with the homeowners while you're working it out. I mean, this is a time of year when they really need to do those fixes in their yards. If it were me, I'd be very upset if somebody told me, well, you're going to have to wait until July or August or.
Right.
I would support moving ahead right now and then use those few we might get as kind of test cases to refine the process. Yeah.
And then
I'll second the motion of Larry's.
Are you going to use the old fee or come up with a new interim fee then?
Yeah, that will be that'll be something we have to do very quickly. Yeah, and if there are any of those bullet points on that memo that you do disagree with, I would like to know now.
I would support a new fee, a lower fee, right away. Yeah.
I would say go ahead and take a shot at the fee, and then you can present it to the board later. And if we want to change it after that, we can change it.
Yeah.
Okay. And the
And
other
I like the
proposed
fact
actions?
that, whoops, as Cliff said, we can call this a pilot project. so changes can be made because we're still kind of feeling our way. But we've got a motion, we've got a second. Would we like to vote?
We would.
Well, Larry,
Aye.
Marge, aye, Cliff,
Aye.
Diane,
Aye.
Pam.
Aye.
Motion carries. So we'll continue with this pilot project.
Thank you.
Yes, and we'll bring back more information next month too.
Okay. Do you want to talk about the enforcement action report?
I certainly can
Anybody?
if you have any questions or.
No, I don't.
No comments.
I have one. I noticed with the, what is it, Whistler Pines or something like that, it seems like every time we have one of these reviews, there's something going wrong over there. Do we have a bigger hammer to get people to cooperate, or do we need a bigger hammer to have them cooperate with things? Because in general, everybody seems to follow the rules, but every once in a while you get somebody like that seems to be more of a problem. And do you have enough leverage to be able to force them to do what it is you want them to do?
Yeah, I think so. You know, Mary, our inspector, is the one that's on that site multiple times a month, working with the developer on making those changes. This project has been going on for, it was going on last year as well. So it's also in timing and stage of the project where it's, more things can go wrong. But in general, I don't know that they've been spectacularly non-compliant with regard to every other site, but certainly they have come up in enforcement reports before. But we do have a kind of a ramp up, a chain of enforcement action that we can use. But I think so far it's our continued presence out there is kind of the biggest tool we have.
Okay, thank you.
Or the best tool, I should say.
I had one question on Cave Century Townhomes.
Yeah.
The write-up mentioned TDA material. Could you clarify what that is?
Yep, I apologize. Tire-derived aggregate, so the shredded tires.
Yeah. Okay.
Paige did attend that demonstration. I was not present for that. I don't know if there's anything, Paige, that you want to add about that.
Not really. Yeah, this is one we cost shared on too for that TDA install. It's been used kind of all over, but this is the first time that I've seen it installed. It's pretty neat to see. So we'll keep an eye on it. Yeah, I've been out there. Mary's been out there a lot too. So we'll keep an eye on it as it goes in and continue watching it as it's online.
Okay.
All right, moving on. Stewardship grant program was under the consent agenda. And then applications, this brings us to Larry's added item, I believe.
Not quite. So
Not quite, okay.
we have the budget status update for stewardship grant program if anyone has any questions about that. Otherwise, we can move to 7A, which is the Stormwater Pollution Prevention Plan annual report.
I'm sorry, I missed your first sentence. Where are we now?
We're at 7A, which is the MS4 Stormwater Pollution Prevention annual report.
Okay.
Yes. This is an annual we submit to the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency each year. We are in MS4 because of our ownership of the Beltline storm sewer system. That's what triggers that MS4 reporting for us. As part of that report, as you can see in there, we have a number of items they call minimum control measures, including public education and outreach and involvement, illicit discharge detection and elimination, and construction site stormwater runoff controls. Nicole puts this report together. She gathers the data and information from a number of staff that work in these different areas. This is a pretty standard form. We also include our alum plant information in there. And there's an appendix for the education report. As part of our MS4 requirement, we're also required to provide an opportunity for the public to comment on this. It's not a public hearing, it's just an opportunity for comment. And so if the board was comfortable, we could, Marge, if you wanted to open it up for any comments from the public. Or we could do board comments first, if there's any.
Let's do board comments first. And if there are none, then we'll go to the public meeting portion.
I just had one comment. And reading through it, I thought it was interesting, where they ask, how do you reach your intended audience? And we checked the brochures and newsletters and stuff like that. One of the things that was in that list that Lauren might be interested in is putting a insert into utility bills. Now, I don't know, what that costs or how to do it, but it is a good way to get to people because almost everybody gets a utility bill. And particularly, Nicole, when you have a different process for homeowners, that might be something, and page 2 of those programs, something to look at inserting into utility bills so that we might give a little happiness with the bad news you get every 3 months.
Yeah, we used to do a lot more of the utility bill inserts. That was a way to reach people, in the early 2000s even. What we're told now is that actually a lot of people don't receive paper mailings anymore, and so they're not receiving that information the same way. It's still an option for sure.
But I agree, I don't get anything in the mail.
Yeah. But it is something that Lauren is going to be doing an outreach kind of survey and try and look at different ways of reaching our audiences. So I'm sure I'll make sure it's on the list as an option as well.
All right, how do you want us to make a motion to approve this, or do we do the public part first? Or
first, I would just ask if any members of the public wish to speak to the MS4 Stormwater Pollution Prevention Plan annual report for 2019.
Okay. Does anybody out there have any comments? All right, hearing none.
Yeah, then the motion would be to accept the 2019 MS4 annual report and authorize me to submit the report to the MPCA.
Okay, does somebody want to make that motion? Cliff,
So
how
moved.
about you?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, around the room again. Marge, yes. Cliff?
Yes.
Larry?
Yes.
Pam?
Yes.
Diane?
Yes.
Motion carries. That brings us to Twin Lake Outlet Action. That's on page 97.
Yes, I'm going to have Brad speak to this, and I'm going to share my screen so that you can see the bids that have been received.
All right, Brad, just a comment. How long is this going to be? Do I have to plug in my phone?
It shouldn't be too long. It's pretty straightforward. We opened bids last Friday, received 5 bids from familiar name contractors. We've received bids, I think, from each of these contractors in the past. The low bidder is Rachel Contracting at a base bid amount of $129,586. And you can see how 2 through 5 line up. They are in order from lowest to highest. The engineer's estimate, I believe, was right at about 167, if I'm remembering correctly. So we're kind of in the middle there, so we are happy to see that. So Rachel Contracting has bid on a number of jobs for the district. I don't believe we've hired them in the past. I don't think they've been low, but they are familiar in the Twin Cities. In fact, Greg Nelson is working with Rachel for Riley Purgatory on some work currently going on in Riley Creek. So they've been around for quite a while. We're familiar with them, and they have a good reputation from what we've experienced and what we've heard through our work with them and other districts or other clients of ours. So do you have any questions about the bid or the bidding process or what's next?
And we've heard good comments from people who are tuning in to us. So does anybody want to make a motion to approve this?
I move we approve the bid to award the work to Rachel Construction.
Second?
Seconded.
Around the room again. Larry?
Aye.
Marge? Aye. Cliff?
Aye.
Diane?
Aye.
Pam?
Aye.
Okay, that brings us to Beltline Resiliency Study.
So this was an item that was tabled last month, and so I included it back in the packet. There were a few changes made based on some of the comments we heard last month. We took the ones that we think warranted a change in the response to comments and included them in red on the table. And we can open the discussion.
Tina, what exactly do we want to talk about?
So ultimately what we would like is to have the board accept the response to comments, and then we would send that response to comments to the people that commented on the Beltline Resiliency Study. In that same motion, you could also agree to finalize the study report and include those response to comments along with the comment letters in the report so that it's kept with that report. Those are the ultimate motions for this item.
Well, that sounds good to me. Larry, you've got to have a comment.
I do. Thank you. Well, as I said at the last meeting, it was kind of hard to go through it. It's still kind of hard with the 2-point type that I have to read, but I do have a couple of comments in there that I don't know whether it'll change what you say or not. But my first concern is when we put the Beltline study out, that we make sure that very clearly we state what this is and what it's not. Because I think some of the commenters in there showed concern for dueling flood projects, if you will. So it needs to be really, if somebody comes in there and looks at it, we don't want them to panic in the fact that, gee, my house is in a floodplain right now, and what am I going to do? Just very clearly state exactly what this is for. Some specific things. On number 4, you talked about conditional probability. I'm presuming that as we go through this process, that will be part of the factors that we look at in our evaluation of things. On number 5, you talked about natural flows. I would like to have more of a discussion on that at some point, not necessarily right now, but for example, is a storm sewer going into a wetlands a natural flow or an unnatural flow? That's the kind of thing that I'd like more input on. On number 13, you changed that and you dropped the idea of a bigger pipe under 694. Is that not being evaluated anymore, or did it just not seem to be feasible, or why was that changed?
Are we commenting on this at this point?
Yeah,
Again, if you write it down, you can give me feedback on every one of these. I'll continue on. On 17, Cliff made the point about the communities taking care of their local flood problems and potentially causing us problems. And I know the response was we're coordinating on that. But I think that's a pretty important discussion that the board ought to have at some point, because I get concerned with that too, that the cities may be doing things that are countervening the things that we have. On item number 21, You indicated you would coordinate with Ramsey County, but she said that Shoreview held the JPA for that. So that should include Shoreview as well, that you would coordinate with that. And on number 42, Mark Maloney said, and I can't sit here and read this while I'm talking, but he basically said it was his understanding, yada, yada, yada. And I would prefer if we gave him a response as to whether his understanding was correct or whether it wasn't correct. We just need to acknowledge that.
Okay.
Now, Larry,
Oh, and
what is the outcome that you're looking for here?
just that these comments not only are for follow-up by the watershed district or by the board of managers, but in certain cases, like the Mark Maloney thing, that they be modified before they're sent out so that we respond to an issue that he brought up. And I'm willing to trust Tina to do that because I know she will.
Okay. Cliff?
Yeah, I was getting back to the motion that was suggested here. But I was ready to move that we accept the comments and the responses and append it to the report to finalize the report. Included with the report and finalize the Beltline Resiliency Study. And that should include the comments to address Larry's comments as well.
So you're actually moving to approve the report, is that correct?
Yes, with the appended comments, yeah.
Right. Okay. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Around the room. Larry?
Discussion first in case there's.
Yeah, we have to have a discussion.
Oh. I thought we did, I'm sorry.
Anybody? Okay.
All right, we're gonna vote. Larry?
Aye.
Marge? Aye. Cliff?
Aye.
Diane?
Aye.
And Pam, I'll start with you next time. Pam?
Aye.
We just approved the report. Now we're on to C, the Beltline Resiliency Study.
That's what we just did. So we're on to Larry's
okay.
agenda item. I said that I would put this up on, Larry, did you want me to put that up on the screen?
Oh, you can if you'd like. The idea and the curse of being an engineer is that you're always trying to solve problems. And there's a lot of work going on as to projects to address and control the water basically north of 694. We had a discussion at the last meeting about whether we could or we couldn't move water downstream, under what conditions. We didn't really come to an exact resolution on that, but we decided to move forward with the projects under the minimal understanding we had of the rule. And I got to thinking about, are there ways that we can address this issue of moving water in non-winter times out of the area when conditions are favorable? Now, obviously, you don't want to impact houses downstream, but it just seemed to me that there were times when we could do this. What it does require, I get it, is constant management by an engineer or somebody like that as to when we could open gates, when we couldn't open gates. We have the facility to be able to get information off of all these water bodies now so we can determine they are. And so I just thought I'd take a crack at some a protocol that might be useful when we're looking at how do we get water out of an area when it's not winter time, or maybe even when it is winter time. I don't know, because, you know, every once in a while we get one of these winters where we don't have snow, we have rain. So there may be those considerations too. Part of this goes to the experience of, for example, you could have a huge rain up here and no rain downstream, and all of a sudden have buildup of water and not be able to move it down if you don't have some kind of protocol. So I kind of whipped this thing up, and what I would like to have the board do is so that we get it more involved in the process, submit it to staff for their review and feedback, and any alternates. Is this helpful? Is it not helpful? Just something else to add to our toolbox in dealing with water issues in this area.
I like that because I don't have really the engineering experience to deal with that item by item.
Yeah, I'll just add that this is, I think, good timing because next month we intended to bring back the pumping scenario information talked about last month for West Vadnais. And so that would be a good time that we can address some of these conditions and ideas that you have written out here. And we can, I think, just what you said, we can kind of come back with our staff thoughts and recommendations on that.
This is a kind of, and I get it, this is kind of an emotional item, I suppose you would say. Mark Maloney's commented on it, Bruce has commented on it, Bert's commented on it. Everybody wants to feel safe all year long, including the people downstream, and so I get that. It's like, is there a way that we can break through this and do a different job, not necessarily better, but a different job of balancing things? So yes, that's my reason for wanting to move it and have it be part of the process.
Brad, did you want to comment, or did you have any thoughts and need information?
Yeah, I would just say, I think that's right. We can fold these into what we will present next month with regards to the overall feasibility study of that bigger pipe through 694 in combination with what the board asked us to look at last month, was the expanded time frame for opportunistic pumping, I guess is how we understood it. You know, I will say some of these things I think have been addressed in different ways through our work with the resiliency study, but I think we can approach this in maybe a different way of explaining how we've looked at this in that study, and then we can see if that's beneficial to the board, to see if they feel as though it's worth taking to the next step, or if it aligns with what you're saying, Larry, kind of a different way of thinking about the balance between upstream and downstream. So I think next month is as Tina said, the timing is good because we can address these at the same time we address some of those other things you've asked us to.
Oh, I have a comment.
Oh, go ahead, Pam.
So, a couple of things. One is, I'm all for all of this. It would be helpful for me, Brad, when you present next month, because I'm very visual, and I remember that beautiful map we have on one of our systems that Barb provided, where we're looking at the houses in red that have the potential to flood, and do this project, and these get removed. But just when you present for me, if you're like, all right, when I'm talking in context, here's the houses I'm talking about that have the potential for flooding here, and if we do this, this may increase the potential of flooding for this house down here. Just to have that visual context will be helpful for me. And then I have a request in that we keep having like 5-inch rains and things happening in all these areas and houses that are potentially flooded, and we have risk mitigation plans in. It would help me as a manager if we had a section on our monthly board meeting that was about floods, and just a simple, like, here's how much rain we had, and did we have to do anything for flooding? Did anybody homes get jeopardized? What did we do about it? Or maybe it's nothing. But that would be helpful for me if you could do that.
Okay.
Sure.
Okay.
Thank you, Pam. Those are great ideas.
I will say, Larry, we, you know, and as you've seen in the past from us, we tend to rely a lot on our hydrologic models that we've built, you know, basically from data from the past and you know, things that we know about the drainage area. And so we do use those tools, and I think we'll still have to use those tools in evaluating these suggestions. But we'll try to, I think as Pam is alluding to, give you different ways of visualizing how beneficial or possibly not beneficial some of these might be in certain times, so you can better make a decision around which ones you want to move forward with, or which elements of this you want to work into future operating plans for systems coming from either West Vadnais or even downstream in the Keller Channel in Lake Phalen.
Good.
Okay, do we have to do anything with this, or we just agree that staff will kind of deal with this and give us some answers? Brad, you and Tina next month.
Yep.
Yeah, I think we have staff or board consensus. I'm comfortable with that.
I'm comfortable with that.
Okay.
All right, can we move on then?
Yes, we can. Thanks, Larry.
Tina, I think you're up next, correct?
Yes, administrators report. I have the meetings.
Tina, excuse me, before you put to the
Yeah.
administrator's report, I know we kind of went through action items. The East St. Paul Target work authorizing advertisement for bids, is that in here still coming? Or
that was in the consent agenda. So
that just went through in the consent agenda. Okay,
Yep.
I'm sorry. Sorry about that.
Yep.
Brad, you just made me feel better because I find this confusing.
Just to comment on the target thing, I was happy to see that the estimate, of course we don't know what the bid will be, but the estimate has come down, which has lowered the price per pound of phosphorus removal, which puts it in a more comfortable category from my point of view. So thanks.
Yep, you're welcome. All right.
Okay, Tina.
So in the administrator's report, I have my meetings attended and upcoming meetings. It's a lot of Zooming in a month's worth of time. A lot of time was spent onboarding with Lauren. We spent, especially that first week, every day for a few hours, just getting her up to speed on things. She also met with all the staff over Zoom or in a few cases, I think in person, social distance person. So that's coming along real well. She's been jumping right in and already starting to develop her 3 to 6 month communications goals and planning process, and has helped me with the upcoming item about the Ramsey County flooding meeting. She's helped me kind of adjust some of those slides and talk about that presentation as well. So I'm real excited to have her on board, and she seems like she's just a great fit for our team. So that has been a lot of my time over the last month. I'll also make a note, on May 18th, I met with Vlamo's, the Vadnais Lake Area Water Management Organization's new administrator. He's new to Vlamo, but he's not new to me. He's Phil Belfori, who was at Rice Creek, and left Rice. Yeah, he left Rice Creek last year and went to the UB, and then is now the Vlamo administrator. And before that, he was at the city of St. Paul before he was at Rice Creek. So I knew him there. I worked with him. He was the water coordinator there. And then he was at Bowser before that. So I knew him actually all the way through those different career changes. So he's jumping right in, and we had a good discussion about collaboration and coordination between the watersheds. Any questions about any of those other meetings?
No.
Okay, the COVID-19 update. COVID-19 seems to have taken a little backseat over the last week as we reeling with other issues in Minnesota.
Who knew?
Unfortunately, it's been quite a year. But as far as COVID-19, that as of June 1st, some businesses started to reopen. our operations haven't changed a lot. I mean, it gives staff a little more freedom to be in the office as need be. We're still asking staff that can to work from home as much as possible. And there's a few staff that have requested that also because of either childcare or other concerns about COVID. So we've been accommodating to that. I am, as I say, working on this back to the office plan that kind of phases in that back to work. It also lays out our cleaning strategies and what happens if somebody in the office were to contract COVID, and then what are the protocols after that. That plan is a template that we received through North Risk Insurance. It's our insurance agent, but it's also a template that's being used by a number of our cities through the League of Minnesota Cities as well. So, we're a smaller organization, so it doesn't have to be as complex maybe as some of the other service-oriented organizations like the cities and county, but nonetheless, we're working through what this means for our office. Cliff,
I would just caution that given the marginal openings of new businesses and the number of Minnesotans that are running over to Wisconsin to visit their bar or restaurant, and now the demonstrations, I think we're potentially going to have a big uptick in cases in the next couple of weeks. So I think we should keep an eye on that before we really get too far ahead of ourselves.
Yeah.
The only thing I would like to see is maybe just for the board, but if I want to call the office and I have a question about an agenda item or anything else, is so you can get somebody answers the phone.
Yeah, right now we have it would go to voicemail, but our staff are checking the voicemails frequently throughout the day. But I have also given out my cell phone, so if you need to get a hold of me, you can always call me on my cell too.
I had one question, Tina. Apparently the state shouldn't hold our public meetings for at least 3 more months. Is that right?
Well, that's the guidance I'm hearing from other cities and other organizations that have public meetings. Yep.
Okay. At the end of that time, have we given any thought to how we might come back to physical meetings? What I'm thinking of is the fact that our meeting room is fairly small.
Yeah.
Trying to get staff and visitors in that would be an issue. Have we looked at potentially alternate sites like going to Shoreview and having it in one of their huge meeting rooms as a way to maybe have a transition?
Yeah, I've been thinking about that. There's a couple things I thought of. One is we could just do the board in person and still show the meeting over Zoom or whatever platform for visitors.
Right.
And I mean,
I like that, Tina. I would like to even try that if we'll see what next month looks like, but if it's a possibility, I'd like to do that. There's 6 of us counting you.
Right. The other
in the conference room, or not, somebody was uncomfortable with that, one of the board people, but the board would be invited and you and everybody else would do Zoom.
Yeah, the other option would be we have our multi-purpose room that's in our office building. We could also have visitors stay in that. We could broadcast essentially onto a TV in there while we would be in the boardroom. I mean, I think if they could see it online, it'd probably be a lot easier than coming in and sitting in a different room. But that's an option. I haven't explored, I guess, what meeting in other locations would look like, but that's also a possibility.
Can the boardroom be shown on Zoom as one picture?
Yeah, we have a camera.
To our camera?
Yep, we have a camera mounted on the wall next to the TV, so we'd be able to do that.
Okay.
And not only that, it's a big screen. We can actually, instead of interrupting, see each other's faces. But I think if it's just the board, I would be fine with that. Or even most of the board. And those who were reluctant could do Zoom.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think.
I have to step away a second. I'll be right back.
Okay.
What, Cliff?
He just has to step away for a second, he said.
Oh.
Are you?
Well, Tina, think about that.
Yeah, I think for July, we'll continue to do on Zoom. And we can take it meeting by meeting too. We can decide in July what we want to do for August or, but like I said, I've seen other watersheds and cities say that they're not going to hold those public meetings in person until the end of summer, but.
I'm just talking about a board meeting.
No, I know. I'm just giving you some guidance on what other organizations are.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I still, it could be kind of socially risky, if you will. Like Cliff said, we don't know what's going to happen with all this opening.
No, I agree. And we have to wait and see if in fact there is a gigantic second wave or
Yeah, I think, I mean,
nobody really knows about this disease.
just as we've been doing, I think we have to take it week by week and see where we're at. We'll plan for July for sure to be on Zoom, and then we can go from there. I guess that next item then though about workshops and having special meetings, I do want to get your feedback on specifically one regarding the watershed management plan update and the Beltline Resiliency Study, Feasibility Studies. I think the intent there was we're going to have a lot of information coming at you at once, and with those feasibility studies wrapping up, and should we do that in a workshop format so that you are not overwhelmed at a board meeting? And are you okay?
Yes.
Okay, we're not over Zoom if that is the
Yeah,
case.
I think we can do those over Zoom because they're mainly information gathering from our point of view. We wouldn't be making any decisions, but more allowing ourselves more time to absorb the information. And if need be, by the time we get done with all that, if we can have an in-person meeting, that could be a follow-up to the Zoom meeting. But I would rather have that information than not have it.
Me too.
Diane?
Yeah, I would like to have them as workshops because then that gives me a chance to focus on it and they're not so long and we can ask the questions. And I think Zoom works very well with the shared screen business, and we're all getting a little better at it. So I think it would work fine. And then we could just go ahead and plan them as normally what would work with people's schedules.
Sounds good. If that's a consensus, I can put some possible dates for both of those so we can get them on the calendar.
Anything else, Tina? Keep going.
Well, the next item was regarding the Ramsey County public meeting that is going to be held next Tuesday, June 9th from 5 to 7. Commissioner Fretham is here. I don't know if she wants to say anything about that meeting. Nicole, would you like to say anything about that?
Okay.
This was the postponed
Sorry,
meeting.
I had to unmute. And my password came up. Yes. We've been, so this was the meeting we had originally planned for March 12th that got canceled out of an abundance of caution due to the COVID outbreak. And I'm so glad I canceled it because everything sort of blew up after that. But we are moving it virtual. So it's going to have hopefully the same format. We're going to have a presentation from Peter Boulay, one of the state climatologists, or he works for the state as a climatologist. And he's going to talk about local impacts of climate change and how that contributes to the issues we're seeing. And then Ramsey-Washington Metro Watershed District, along with some other watershed districts, some cities, and the Parks and Public Works departments of Ramsey County are going to talk about the work that's been done to address the specific flooding issues in our community, what their individual responsibilities are as local units of government, and what they see as their next steps moving forward. Really, the goal here is to level set the community with the information about contributing factors. I think there's a lot of misinformation, people thinking, oh, it was just this one thing that happened and not seeing the full context. And then also an opportunity to sort of transparently share the collaboration that's happening and to be open and accountable to the community for the work that we want to see get done moving forward. So it's an opportunity to talk about that. And I know there are a lot of folks who have come up to me with ideas that they think could just solve the problem. So being able to, one, share those ideas, because some of them might be really important and useful, but otherwise to be able to provide some context in response to those ideas as well. So that is the goal for it to be a conversation, an initial conversation. I don't know that this will be the be all and end all. I hope we could come together in the future and share, you know, as we move forward with different projects. Thank you for letting me listen. I'm so glad I got to listen to this meeting today and hear about all the different work that you're doing and solutions you're exploring. I know I've talked with the city of Shoreview as well, and our park staff as they've explored ways to respond and to continue to provide services to the area. So being able to just be really open about that and to involve the community in that decision making and priority setting.
Will we all get the website to tune into if it's virtual?
Yes. There is a Facebook invite now, and we'll get it posted there. We've been looking at some different options, but we should get that link out tomorrow, and hopefully Tina would be able to share with board members as well.
There we go.
I'll share with the board, and we'll also be promoting it then on our social media channels as well. Thanks.
Anything else? Any questions? And thank you. And Tina, you're finished.
Yes.
Now I think we'll go through the 20 or so projects one by one.
Yeah. So for the projects and program status report, I don't have any asterisks like I did last time. So there wasn't any prepared discussion that we had, but if you have any questions, we're happy about any of the items. We're happy to address those. I guess I will make one comment though, that the West Vadnais Lake outlet lowering project, Brad, the last I heard they were going to be on site starting tomorrow. Is that still the plan?
That's the last I heard as well. They were getting up getting together the traffic control today is what I heard through Dave and Craig Nelson. And the plan is to start tomorrow. Oh, Dave is here. So
yeah, Dave, did you have anything to add to that?
No, everything is on track for tomorrow as far as we know. So things are good.
Good.
Okay. I would like to interject here that at some point in time, maybe not next meeting, but the meeting after that, I would like to go through these projects one by one so we know where they are, and if we have any questions. That might take 15 minutes and it might take 2. But we haven't been, hello?
Sure.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Any other questions or comments about any of the project status report? Diane and Larry both have their hands up. Let's go, Diane.
You're muted, Diane.
My question is about the automated lake monitoring systems.
Yeah.
Apparently staff have access. When is the public going to have access, which includes us?
Yes, well, we are working on that. Lauren is working through our website to see how that website viewer is going to look through our through the lake level viewer to our website and how that's all going to fit together. But Brett, I don't know if I had a deadline for when they were going to have that completed, but I know they were working on that over the next several weeks.
Yeah, I don't have a specific deadline either, but I know it's ongoing, and that is the next step in this, to try to get that out so it's more digestible by the public. Right now, it's not quite there. It's not clean. It works, and staff can use it, but it's getting cleaned up at this point. So
we'll get it in.
We want it to be live as soon as possible too. I think it'll help Dave. It'll help other staff members be able to monitor these systems.
Yeah, so maybe at the next meeting, if it's not live, you can give us an update and let us know when it is. And then I know you're adding lakes, so maybe you can give us a little preview of what ones are coming and when.
Yep.
That sounds great.
will do.
Mhm.
Tina,
Larry
anything
had
else?
a-
Are we going,
Well,
Cliff,
Larry-
do you have anything to add?
Oh, Larry had his hand up.
Okay,
So does
yeah.
Cliff.
Oh,
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
I just wanted to comment that I went by the Wakefield system and the Aldrich Arena. I think the plantings look great. It looks like everything's functioning good at this point.
Yeah, it's looking good.
Good.
And Larry?
Pam, anything?
I think Larry has his
Diane?
hand.
Where are we?
Larry has his hand up.
Wait a minute. I have a couple of
Of
questions
course.
and comments. One is that in the first one, we're talking about feasibility studies. It says that you're reaching out to the cities in each study area about contracting homeowners in the survey areas. Where does that stand, and what are you going to say to the homeowners in the survey area?
Usually what we say is this is part of a larger flood study, and we're just verifying some elevations that we have through aerial topography. And but we are especially sensitive to people being on their property under normal conditions. And now with COVID-19, we were making sure that the city was supportive of that, because they tend to get the first round of questions. If somebody is out in their neighborhood and maybe even at their neighbor's home, they'll call the city first. So we wanted to, gain their support and make sure they fully understood what we were doing. So.
Okay, all right. So you're not presenting any information. You're just out surveying land, and they're going to ask why. I mean,
Right.
why when they show up in our backyard too.
Yeah, yeah. But it usually comes as and it's accurate. It's part of a larger flood study, and we're just trying to verify information. So, do you have a question?
We just had some utility work going on in our neighborhood, and they sent a letter about a week ahead of time to tell us that these workers will be in the area. They'll be identified this way. That could be an option too. It may eliminate some fears.
Yeah, we do that too. We send a letter out. Correct, Brad?
Okay.
Yeah.
I had a couple more things. Speaking of the Wakefield Park Cross Avenue Stormwater Project, there's a real short description in the project report. It seems like nothing went on, but there was a $10,000 charge for it. Is there a reason for such a charge for so little feedback?
Right. Some of these things that as they get to the end of the project, there's not a lot to say, but there's a lot of wrap up that happens with punch list items and time spent with the contractor and verifying quantities and things like that. And so we can sure add that to the description, but I get what you're saying. Sometimes they're out of balance between what's said about them.
Yeah.
Well,
it's
and
not that I don't trust you, but it's just.
I understand.
But BAR's billing period isn't necessarily our month either, so there's some backlog there.
There's a little bit of a shift. Yeah.
That's a fair comment. I like that. Okay.
Okay.
In the Keller channel weir and the Phelan outlet modifications, it's just a comment. The faster you can go, the happier at least I'm going to be about this, because to me these are central items in balancing things out. And kind of a question on that is, as you're going through the scenarios, looking at the feasibility studies, I presume you're factoring in that the lowering the Keller weir and the Phelan outlet, factoring that into your evaluation of these areas, like assuming those are going to work, and then what does it look like?
Yes, all of that is factored in. When we talk of feasibility studies, it's getting down to the next level of detail. So while it will end up being a certain pipe size or a certain system, you were also looking at alignments, and how would this actually be put in the ground, and which direction we would take pipes and control structures and things like that, and how do those compare up against other alternatives that may involve expanded storage and things like that. So all of those things kind of get folded together, but this is that next level of detail below the Beltline Resiliency study, where you start to see what would it take to actually put a system like this in place from a cost standpoint, from a permitting standpoint, from a an impact to people in the area. If maybe the cost suggests that there should be property purchases, but of course that comes with lots of impacts to individuals too. So we're trying to fold those all together in these studies.
Okay.
Long answer, but yes.
No, that's a good answer. Thank you. I appreciate that. And one other final thing on the Twin Lake outlet. It's indicated that the weir elevation in the summer was raised to 874.7. Can you tell me why?
So
that's,
Aside from what I can read.
Yeah, go ahead, Brad.
I was just going to say that's the closed elevation. That's
right.
where the control point is at, and why that elevation was chosen. Is that really your question?
That's my question. Why was, well, it was kind of like, why was it changed and why was it chosen?
So one of the things I can say about that is the plan that you saw in May had an open, so it was open and allowed to overflow at 873.5. So that was elevation. Well, it's that piece that was changed that makes the difference for Jarvis. So by making that higher and not allowed to overflow, that's what allowed this plan to be operational based on your feedback from May, to not increase flood levels downstream. So it was that automatic overflow at 873.5 that caught without any control, right? It was just a spillway that caused the increase in Jarvis. That's why we were able to stay with the 872.8 trigger elevation for lowering the outlet. I did have like Bert said, a lot of conversations with him about it. So
Good, okay.
Yeah.
And that's why we started that discussion about opportunistic discharge.
Right. Yeah.
We thought, well, that's pretty high. Is there some way that during the year, if we have opportunities, could we open that and knock the level down a little bit? And that's assuming the lake would bounce up that high.
Right.
May not. Yeah.
Right. Okay. Thanks. That's it from me.
Let's see, we still didn't get Pam.
I have no comments. Thank you.
All right, and we got Cliff, we've got Larry, Diane.
I'm done.
All right, I'm done.
okay, we don't have anything else. There's report of managers. Larry has his hand up. If he.
Oh, no. Okay. Sorry.
Otherwise, we can
need
make a motion
to adjourn.
Yeah.
That's what I was going to do, was move that we adjourn the meeting.
Perfect.
Okay, Larry, do it.
Thanks, Larry.
I'll
It's
second
Larry.
the motion.
10 seconds.
This meeting is now adjourned.
So you have to go around.
Thank you.
You have to do.
Okay.
Do we have to do a roll call?
Oh, well, we will. All right, me, yes. Pam,
Yep.
Diane,
Yes.
Cliff,
Yes.
and Larry.
Yes.
This meeting is now officially adjourned.
There we go.
Thanks,
All right.
everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Bye, everybody. Have fun.
Bye. Stay healthy.
See ya.